Hello, welcome to tonight's story, a place where you don't need to try to think. You don't need to do anything at all. Just listen and let everything slow down. Find a truly comfortable position. Loosen your shoulders, relax your body, and when you are ready, gently take a deep breath in. Then breathe out very slowly. Feel your breath becoming steadier, slower, as if your body is naturally drifting into a state of rest without you having to try. And while you are there listening, you can imagine that you are standing in a place far away, an ancient town from many centuries ago, where time seems to flow more slowly, where every sound is gentle and soft, and where the night rain is falling lightly and steadily, like a wordless melody composed just for you. You are standing at the entrance of the town. The road ahead is paved with ancient stones, slightly slick from the rain. The light from distant oil lamps reflects back in long streaks upon the wet ground. The cool air brushes lightly against your skin, carrying the scent of damp earth, of old wood, and of the rains that have fallen here through many ages. And you begin to walk, step by step slowly, without haste, as if there is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to do, simply walking and feeling. The sound of rain falling around you creates a steady rhythm, not too loud, not too quiet, just enough for you to realize it is there, like a silent companion. Drops of water fall onto rooftops, onto wooden planks, onto boulders, then flow into small streams winding through every crevice. You can hear the water dripping from the eaves, drop by drop, falling to the ground, and each sound seems to pull your mind a little slower. On both sides of the road are ancient wooden houses, their walls leaning slightly with time, their roofs covered in moss and damp under the rain. A few windows are still lit, their warm yellow light spilling out, creating a sense of safety and peace. You cannot see the people inside clearly, but you can imagine them sitting near the fireplace, listening to the rain, talking softly, or simply enjoying the warmth and silence. And that thought makes you feel more at ease, as if you too are a part of this place. You continue to walk, the path leading you deeper into the town, and you realize that everything here is slow. There is no noise, no rush, only very light, very small movements, like a door slightly swaying as a breeze passes through, or the flame in an oil lamp flickering with each gust. And in that space, you begin to feel your body growing lighter. Your mind is no longer pulled away by scattered thoughts, but gradually becomes still. Up ahead, you see a small path veering to the right, leading down to a lower area that looks like a small square. You step down a few stone steps, feeling a slight change in the space. The sound of the rain is a bit clearer, here as it falls onto the water of an ancient well sitting in the middle of the square. You don't need to count, for they just keep falling, steadily, like something that requires no attention yet is always there. The road continues to stretch out, but you are no longer observing it, for the sensation of walking has become so familiar that you don't have to think about it. Your body moves on its own, keeping its own rhythm, while your mind drifts lighter and further away, as if you are both here and somewhere deeper inside yourself, a place with no clear images, no specific sounds, only a very soft silence. The surrounding houses gradually grow fewer, the gaps between them wider, the light sparser. The darkness is no longer a void, but has become a soft backdrop, gently enveloping everything. Nothing is sudden, nothing demands your attention. Everything is simply fading, slowing down like a piece of music drifting into a quiet end. As the darkness grows softer, no longer something separate but merging with everything around you, you realize the path beneath your feet is no longer as distinct as it was at first. The stones are still there, still damp, but you no longer need to look down to step. Your body seems to have grown accustomed to this rhythm, to this slowness, and each subsequent step is simply a natural part of the flow you are moving within. In the distance, there is a very faint sound, not a human voice nor any distinct noise, but more like the wind brushing through the crevices between stone walls, carrying a slight chill and the scent of rain that is soaked deep into everything. You don't need to determine where it comes from because it doesn't matter. It is just a part of this space, like the dim light, like the droplets still falling steadily, like yourself right now. existing in that stillness without needing a specific reason. The path leads you to a small stone bridge arching over a narrow, slow-moving stream below. Rainwater from all around gathers here, creating a gentle current, not strong, not loud, just enough to produce a continuous, steady sound. As you step onto the bridge, you can hear that sound more clearly. A smooth, uninterrupted flow of water merging with the sound of the rain still falling from above, forming layers of sound that are not chaotic, but very orderly, very pleasant. You pause for a moment in the middle of the bridge, not because you need to rest, but because the atmosphere here naturally makes you want to slow down even further. You place your hand on the stone railing, feeling the cold, damp surface beneath your fingertips. A very real, very simple sensation. In that moment, you can feel your own presence more clearly, not in thought, but in sensation, in breath, in stillness. The water below reflects faint light from afar, streaks of glow that stretch out, trembling slightly with the movement of the water, distorting then stabilizing again, much like fleeting thoughts that do not stay long, that do not need to be held on to. They just come and go, and you don't need to do anything with them. You continue across the bridge. The path on the other side leads into a sparser area where there are fewer houses and more open space. The sounds also become more distant, lighter, as if everything is gradually receding behind you, leaving you in a space that is wider, yet even quieter. A gentle breeze brushes past, not strong, just enough to lightly rustle the leaves and carry a wave of cool air. As it touches you, you can feel a very tiny shift in the atmosphere, a slight movement that disturbs nothing, simply reminding you that everything is still flowing, still continuing, however slowly. Up ahead, the path begins to slope gently downward, leading away from the town center. You don't need to decide whether to go on because your feet keep walking, keeping the rhythm, no faster, no slower, just steady, like a long-held habit. As you walk, you no longer notice your surroundings, not because there is nothing to see, but because you no longer need to look. Everything has become so familiar that it no longer requires attention. The sounds fade away, the light grows dimmer, and you realize the town is behind you, but not in the sense that you are leaving. Rather, it feels as if it is still there, continuing to exist, only you are no longer in its lighted part. You are entering a darker part, but also a softer, lighter one where nothing needs to be clear. The path beneath your feet is no longer stone, but has turned into soft, damp earth. Each step creates a very light sensation, almost silent, and that makes everything even more tranquil, as if even your footsteps do not wish to disturb this space. You keep going, with no destination, no goal, simply continuing. As you do, you can feel the gaps between the thoughts in your head gradually widening. Larger spaces appear between them, and within those spaces, there is a very deep, very smooth quietude. Somewhere in the distance, perhaps a final lamp of the town glows with a very faint light, barely enough to illuminate anything at all. But you no longer need that light because everything you need is already here, in the stillness, in the breath, in the gradual lightening of your body. And as you continue to walk, you no longer feel like you are walking, but rather like you are drifting. Not drifting through external space, but within a very gentle current inside yourself, where everything is slow, everything is calm, and nothing needs to change. As that sensation of drifting light becomes familiar, you no longer clearly distinguish between your footsteps and the current carrying you. Everything merges together naturally, as if you have belonged to this slow rhythm for a long time, only truly realizing it now. The earthen path beneath your feet leads you a bit further, where familiar stone walls and wooden rooftops fade away. In their place are wider open spaces, low meadows drenched in rainwater, and rows of trees standing silently in the night, their water-heavy canopies occasionally trembling as a very light breeze passes through, creating sounds almost impossible to hear unless you are truly listening. You slow down, not because you are tired, but because the atmosphere here causes all movement to naturally diminish, as if this place itself is resting, and you are simply merging into that rest, doing nothing more, needing to be nowhere, just being in this moment. To the left, there is a smaller path, almost just a trail, leading across a low field. You turn into it without thinking, for all choices at this moment are unimportant. All paths are the same in that they all lead you slower, deeper into the stillness. The grass beneath your feet is soft and damp. Each step creates almost no sound, and that makes you feel lighter, as if you are no longer carrying the weight of a long day, as if everything you experienced before has been left behind, dissolving into the rain, into the gentle darkness surrounding you. The rain continues to fall, but now you only perceive it as a very distant, blurred layer of sound, like a gentle memory rather than something happening right now. This causes you to stop paying attention to it, for your mind has begun to sink deeper into the quiet within. You pass through that field, and up ahead there is a small, simple house sitting apart from the town. The light inside is very faint, just enough for you to realize that someone is there, or once was, but you do not draw near. You do not need to know more, for its mere presence is enough to create a sense of slight warmth, very distant, very mellow. You continue to pass by without stopping, and as that house gradually fades behind you, you realize you are no longer observing your surroundings. You are no longer recording every detail as you did at first, because everything has become softer, mistier, as if things do not need to be clear in order to exist. The path ahead seems to have no specific shape, only a gentle direction that you are following. As you step forward, you can feel your breath becoming very deep, very slow, each inhalation lasting a bit longer, each exhalation a bit lighter. Between those breaths, there are very long, very smooth pauses. You do not need to do anything to maintain that breath. It happens naturally, just like the way the rain still falls. Like the way the wind still glides through the treetops, it all continues without intervention. Out in the distance, there are no more lights, no more signs of the town, yet you do not feel lost or lonely. This space is not empty. It is full in a very gentle, very peaceful way, as if everything has been reduced to its simplest level, leaving only what is truly necessary. You keep walking, but now you no longer know how long you have been stepping. You can no longer count the time, no longer distinguish between before or after, for everything has become a continuous flow. No beginning, no end, only a very slow, very steady progression. Your body grows lighter, not in the sense that you are disappearing, but in the sense that you no longer clearly feel its individual parts. Your hands, your feet, your shoulders, your back. They all seem to merge into one common sensation, a feeling that is soft, stable, and unchanging. And while you continue to drift in that state, any remaining thoughts, if they exist, become very blurred, very distant. They are no longer clear enough to hold you. They appear very lightly, then vanish instantly, like the ripples on the water you saw before, leaving no trace. The space around you no longer needs to be described, for you no longer depend on images. You are left only with feeling, a feeling very wide, very deep, as if you are within a vast silence where everything is held in a state of perfect quiet. And you continue to be there, needing to do nothing, needing to go nowhere, simply continuing to drift. While you continue to drift within that tranquility, no longer clearly perceiving distance or time, you may notice that the space around you also seems to be changing very slightly, not a sudden shift, but like a thin mist gradually spreading, softening every line, making everything mellower, less sharp, and you do not need to see clearly to know that you are still there. The path you are traveling, though no longer distinct, retains a sense of familiarity, as if you have walked upon it many times before. Each step now is no longer a conscious act, but merely a part of the collective flow, light, steady, requiring no direction. In the distance, or perhaps very nearby, there is a very faint sound, like water flowing over small stones, not continuous, not regular, yet very smooth, very pleasant. You do not need to determine where it is, for you are no longer searching for the source of sound. You simply let it be there as part of the silent backdrop you inhabit. The air around you remains cool, but the chill has faded, becoming pleasant and stable, as if it has adjusted itself to match the rhythm of your breath. When you inhale, you do not just feel the air entering. You feel the stillness coming in with it, spreading gently through your chest, then slowly radiating throughout your entire body. The rows of trees you passed earlier are now only blurred shapes without detail, without clarity. But you do not need to see them, for you already know they are there, and that presence is enough. No further information is required. Your footsteps continue, but you no longer feel each one distinctly. There is only a very light movement, almost non-existent. In that moment, you may realize that you are no longer focused on moving, but are gradually sinking into a state where everything diminishes, slows down, and softens. Perhaps you are still walking, or perhaps you stopped at some point without realizing it, for the sensation of movement and standing still are no longer different. All exist within the same state, a very deep, very steady quietude. Somewhere very far away, the rain is still falling, but now it is only a very thin layer, almost no longer a separate sound, but merging into the entirety of the space, like a very light vibration that you do not need to notice. It is still there, but it does not ask you to listen. You no longer need to track anything at all, no longer need to clearly visualize any scene, for every image has now become soft, drifting, without clear boundaries. And that is precisely what allows your mind to no longer be held by any single point. The sensation of your body continues to ebb, not disappearing, but simply becoming lighter, less defined, as if you no longer need to recognize each individual part. Everything becomes a unified whole, smooth, stable, with no part standing out more than any other. Your breath right now is very slow, very deep, yet you do not need to control it, no need to monitor it. It happens on its own, just as everything else is happening, without effort, without intervention. And in that state, you can feel that the silences between your thoughts are growing longer, to the point where sometimes you no longer realize a thought has appeared. It is just a very vast, very calm space, with nothing that needs to be filled. The space around you is no longer a specific place, no longer the town, no longer the road, no longer the field or the bridge. Everything has merged together, becoming a very light, very distant background, just enough to give you a sense that you are still somewhere, but without the need to know exactly where. You continue to drift within it, no faster, no slower, not going up, not going down, just a very even, very stable current. And it is that very stability that makes everything more comfortable. Nothing unexpected, nothing changing, only a very gentle continuation. Perhaps in some place a small sound appears and then vanishes, but you do not hold on to it, do not follow it, for you no longer need to cling to anything. Everything comes and goes naturally, leaving no trace. And as you remain in that state, you may realize there is no longer a clear boundary between you and the space around you, no more sense of inside or outside. Everything has become one, light and very still. The rhythm of your breath continues, but you no longer pay attention to it. It is just a very slow, very steady movement, a part of that silent backdrop. And each time it occurs, it seems to take you a little deeper, making you a little lighter. There is no point to stop, no point to begin again, only a continuous flow, uninterrupted, unchanging, and you need to do nothing with it except to simply be within it. As you continue to walk through that expanding space, you begin to realize that what lies ahead is not entirely empty. Instead, there are subtle signs of life. Not noisy, not distinct, but enough for you to feel that this place still exists quietly, much like the town behind you as it sinks deeper into its own rest. The earthen path leads you to a slightly elevated area where the ground is no longer as soft as before, but firmer. As you step onto it, you can feel a tiny shift beneath your feet, a steadier, more grounded sensation, and this causes your pace to become even more rhythmic, as if your body is naturally adjusting to harmonize with this new space. Up ahead, simple structures begin to flicker into view, perhaps small houses scattered about, no longer clustered together like in the town, but separated, each with its own pocket of space. They are not crowded or joined, creating a feeling that is very airy, very light. One of those houses has a very soft glow emanating from within. Not a bright light that reveals everything, but a tender patch of radiance, as if filtered through a thin veil. As you pass by, you hear no sound from inside, no voices, no movement, only the very still presence of that light. You do not stop, but you realize the existence of that house has made the surrounding air feel a bit warmer, not in temperature, but in a very slight, indescribable sense, like knowing there is a safe place somewhere. That knowledge is enough. You no longer feel the need to search further. The road continues to stretch, curving gently past a row of low trees. As you walk through, you can hear the sound of water droplets falling from leaves to the ground, no longer falling directly from the sky, but slower, sparser, as if the rain is gradually weakening. Or perhaps you are simply entering a place where the rain does not reach as it did before. Further off, you see another stone-paved path, but it is not like the one in town. The stones here are larger, coarser, with gaps between them where grass grows through the crevices. As you step onto them, you can feel the contact points more clearly underfoot. A slightly rugged sensation, yet very real and very stable. You follow that path for a while, realizing it leads you to an area of even deeper quiet, where there are no more lamps, no more signs of people. There is only nature and the very faint traces of previous presence, like a place that was once used but is now being left in peace. The space here is not darker, but simply has fewer details, fewer things to look at. This allows your mind to stop being pulled towards specific images, gradually transitioning into a broader state where you no longer need to define what you are seeing, but only to feel. A light breeze passes through, clearer this time, enough for you to feel the movement of air against your skin. As it passes, it carries a very fresh sensation, not cold, but a change, very slight, like a small ripple gliding across a still surface. You stop, not because you need to, but because there is no reason to keep stepping. As you stand there, you realize that standing still and moving are no longer very different. Both bring the same sensation, a very deep, very stable quietude. In the distance, perhaps you see a very blurred horizon where the sky and the earth merge, their boundaries lost. You do not need to see it more clearly, for it does not matter. Everything is already enough exactly as it is. Your body now feels neither heavy nor light, neither tense nor relaxed, but simply in a neutral state, smooth, unchanging, as if you have found a perfect point of balance without having to hold on to it. Your thoughts, if they still appear, are no longer clear, no longer forming sentences or shapes, but are merely faint traces that arrive and dissolve before you can even notice them. This allows your mind to remain uninterrupted. The surrounding space continues to maintain that stability. Nothing new appears, nothing suddenly vanishes. It is just a very even, very slow continuation, as if everything has reached a state where it no longer needs to change further. And you are within it. No need to adjust, no need to track, No need to understand, simply being there. You remain in that quiet expanse, no longer drawn to anything in particular, and you begin to realize that the path you are standing on doesn't lead further away, but gradually circles back toward a familiar place. It is as if you are following a very wide, very slow circle, with no clear beginning or end, only the gentle continuation of footsteps that require no thought. Then ahead of you, through the soft and hazy space, the image of the village reappears. It is not as sharp as it was at first, but mellower, more silent, as if the village itself has sunk deeper into its own rest. The wooden roofs lie still under a rain that has lightened significantly, leaving only stray drops that occasionally fall from the eaves. The light from the window frames is weaker now, no longer reaching far outward but lingering in the immediate space, creating a sense of warmth that is private and quiet. As you step back onto the familiar cobblestone path, you no longer feel like an arrival. Rather, it feels as if you have always been here, a natural part of this place, unnoticed, requiring no attention, simply existing in the slow rhythm the village keeps. You pass by the houses you saw before, but this time you do not stop to observe. You are no longer curious about what lies inside, for you understand that every place carries the same stillness, differing only in tiny details that you don't need to distinguish. The path leads you past a small corner where a wooden barrel collects rainwater. The water flows in very gently, forming ripples that spread out and then vanish. You don't need to look for long to realize that every movement here is identical in one way. There is no hurry, nothing needs to be finished. Everything simply happens and then dissolves into the collective silence. You continue walking, and this time you go deeper into the heart of the village, where smaller paths intertwine to form ambiguous walkways. But you don't need to choose a right or wrong way, for any direction brings you to the same state. You turn down a small alley, passing a low stone wall covered in moss. Your hand brushes the surface as you pass, feeling the damp coolness and the way it is smoothed over time. That sensation is very real, very simple, enough to ground you in this moment, yet without the need to hold on to it. You walk on, and ahead, a small courtyard opens up where a few wooden chairs are scattered. No one is sitting there. No sign of recent use. They are just there, as if they have been for a very long time and will continue to be without change. You pass them by without stopping, for you do not need to rest. You have been in a state of rest for a long while already. As you move further, you realize the surrounding sounds have almost ceased to change. You can no longer distinguish between the rain, the wind, or the silence. Everything has merged into a background that is perfectly even, perfectly smooth, no peaks, nothing to catch your focus. And this makes your mind lighter and lighter, no longer pulled in any direction. You pass through an even narrower lane where the walls on either side are taller, enclosing the space. Here you can feel the stability of the air more clearly. No wind, no movement, only a deep layer of stillness surrounding you. Walking through this space, you almost lose the sensation of your own footsteps. It is a movement so light it nearly ceases to exist. You reach the end of the narrow path and step out into a small clearing behind the village where there are no more houses, only a wide stretch of land and a few great trees standing still. Here you stop, not because you need to, but because there is no reason to continue, no destination to reach, nothing to do. And as you stand there, you can feel that everything has become very simple. No more details, no more clear images, only a sensation that is very smooth, very vast, very stable. In this state, you no longer distinguish whether you are inside the village or outside of it, for that boundary no longer matters. Everything has blended into one shared space where you simply are. You don't need to understand. You don't need to hold on. You don't need to go forward or turn back. Just stay in that very light peace where every breath and every feeling passes naturally, uninterrupted, unchanged, as if the village, the rain, the path, and you yourself are all existing together in a flow that is very slow, very calm, and never needs to end. As you continue to dwell within the peaceful expanse of that village, you gradually realize that everything around you is not merely silent, but carries a rhythm of life that is incredibly slow and steady. As if every rooftop, every path, and every courtyard is breathing together in a gentle, unhurried cadence. You walk slowly across a wide courtyard where the ground remains damp from the rain. As your feet touch the surface, you can feel the tender firmness of the earth, neither too hard nor too soft, just enough to hold you in a sense of stability. Ahead of you, a row of small houses appears a bit more clearly, not brightly lit, but glowing with faint, flickering lights from within, as if the villagers have long since drifted into sleep, leaving only a few soft embers that haven't quite faded. You pass a closed wooden door, its surface darkened by time, and though no sound emerges from inside, you can still sense the warmth lingering there. You don't need to see it or step inside. Simply knowing it exists is enough to make the space feel more comforting. The path leads you into a gentle turn, taking you deeper into the rear of the village where the houses grow sparser and the distance between them widens. The space opens up naturally, without clear boundaries. You step across a stretch of uneven stone paving, large and small stones interspersed, and as you walk, the sensation beneath your feet shifts slightly with every step, yet it doesn't break your rhythm. Instead, it makes you walk even slower, even more steadily, as if your body is self-adjusting to fit each tiny change. To your right, a row of low trees stands still, leaves still heavy with water. Occasionally, a drop falls very lightly, creating a sound so small it seems to vanish the moment it appears. You don't need to stop to listen, for that sound isn't meant for your attention. It is simply a part of the collective quiet. You keep walking, and the path gradually leads you to a slightly higher piece of ground where you can look down upon the entire village below. You don't see every detail clearly, only the soft silhouettes of rooftops, the paths, and the mingling of light and shadow. As you stand there, you don't feel like an observer, but rather as if you are inside that very painting, not separate, not different, simply existing along with it. The wind now is very light, almost imperceptible if you don't look for it, but it's enough to carry a cool, soothing sensation as it brushes past. It changes nothing. It only makes everything a little more pleasant. You stand there for a moment longer, not needing to decide whether to go on or turn back, for that choice no longer matters. As you take the next step, you realize you are no longer walking for any purpose, but only to keep pace with the peace that is leading you. The road ahead no longer has a distinct shape, not because it has disappeared, but because you no longer need to see it clearly. Everything has become familiar in a very deep way. It requires no recognition, no memory, only being within it. And as you continue to move, you can feel that your body is no longer holding on to any tension. Everything relaxes naturally without effort, without thought, much like the way this village exists. It needs no change, no hurry. It simply is. In this very light, very deep, and very steady silence, every moment follows the next, so slowly that you can no longer distinguish between before and after. There is only a sensation that is very smooth, very stable, as if you have always been in this state for a long time and never need to leave. You continue to walk within that peace, gradually realizing that the village is not simply a place to pass through, but rather a space holding you within its slowness, not by restraint, but by making everything so gentle that you no longer have a reason to move any faster. The path ahead leads you across a wider stretch of ground nestled between low houses, where the earth is a bit drier than the places you've just traveled. As your feet touch the surface, you can feel that tiny shift, a sense of greater stability, as if this spot had been sheltered from the rain all along. To the left, a wooden eave extends from a small cottage, sheltering a few simple items placed neatly beneath it. They show no sign of recent use. Yet they are not forgotten, all resting there in such an orderly way, as if they belong to the slow rhythm of life. You pass by without stopping, but their presence makes you feel that everything has its place, nothing in excess and nothing missing, and that makes your mind grow even stiller, no longer searching or comparing anything at all. The path continues to lead you through a small, curving lane, and as you follow the bend, you realize the light in the village has now almost completely vanished. Only very faint patches of glow remain, not enough to cast a shadow, just enough to retain a slight sense of space. And as you walk through that mellow light, you no longer feel the need to see clearly, for everything has become familiar in such a profound way. Without images, without details, you still know exactly where you are within this flow. Ahead, a small courtyard appears, this time without any objects, just a complete, open void, and as you enter, you can feel the silence of this place even more distinctly. Unbroken by any detail, with nothing to notice and nothing to think about, there is only a space that is very vast and very smooth. Standing in the center of that courtyard, you realize that standing still brings the exact same sensation as walking. There is no clear difference as both draw you deeper into the state of lightness. The wind has almost entirely ceased now. The air stands still in a very gentle way, not heavy or stifling, but like a soft layer enveloping you, keeping everything in a state of stability. You continue out of the courtyard without needing to think about your direction, and the path ahead leads you down a very slight slope. Not enough to clearly notice unless you pay close attention, but enough to create a sensation of drifting downward very slowly, very smoothly. As you descend, you can feel your pace becoming slower and slower. Not because you are tired, but because there is no longer any reason to maintain a faster rhythm. Everything around you is at such a low speed, and your body naturally merges into that tempo. The houses behind you gradually blur, not disappearing but simply becoming part of a broader background where there are no clear boundaries between near and far, between before and after. Everything blends into a single, very light layer, and within that layer, you no longer feel you are moving in any specific direction. It is more like drifting in a space with no beginning and no end, where each moment follows the next so steadily that you no longer perceive the transition between them. As you remain in that state, you can feel that everything inside you has become just like the world outside. No fluctuations, no sudden changes, only a flow that is very slow, very stable, very calm. You need to do nothing. You need to hold on to nothing. Just continue to be there, in the very light peace of the village that has sunken deep into the night. As you dwell within that peaceful expanse, you gradually realize that the village is not merely silent at night, but carries within it a gentle rhythm of life that stretches through both day and night, as if every moment here has been slowed down so that no one ever has to hurry. You can imagine a very early morning, when mist still lightly blankets the wooden roofs and the stone paths. The villagers begin to wake, not because they are startled awake, but because their bodies naturally open their eyes to the soft first light of day. A baker opens his wooden door, not making a loud sound, just a familiar movement repeated every day. He kindles a small fire in the oven, placing the dough prepared from the night before inside, and the scent of baking bread spreads very slowly, not sharp, not rushed, just enough to blend into the air and become a part of the morning. In another place, a woman steps out into her backyard holding a small wooden bucket. She does nothing in haste, simply drawing water from the well, letting it settle for a moment before turning back inside. Every action has its pause, devoid of urgency, as if time here is always sufficient for everything. And as you continue to feel this, you realize that the children in the village do not run or shout loudly. They walk slowly, speak softly, playing simple games without the need for winning or losing. Just being together is enough. Noon arrives gently, The light is not dazzling or harsh, but spreads evenly over the rooftops and the paths. The villagers go about their work in their own rhythm. One person repairs a roof, each wooden shingle placed down carefully, not rushing to finish but ensuring each piece is firm. Another sits before their doorstep, sewing a piece of fabric, each stitch steady, no faster, no slower, as if the act itself is a way to keep the mind in a state of constant peace. And then, as evening falls, things do not stop abruptly but merely slow down. The light softens, the wind grows lighter, and sounds diminish. The villagers return home. No one speaks loudly. No one rushes. Every door closes gently, as if not wanting to disturb the pre-existing quiet. When night returns, the village does not become different. It only settles deeper into its inherent state. Small lights appear, then gradually fade out, house by house, street by street. You realize that life here is not divided into distinct periods, but is a continuous flow where day and night are not separate, but follow one another smoothly, without a clear beginning and without an end. As you remain within that flow, you no longer feel like an observer, but as if you are living within that very rhythm, not needing to participate, not needing to change, just being there and letting everything happen around you naturally, just as the village has always existed, slow, peaceful, and never needing to hurry. And when the harvest season arrives, that peaceful village does not grow loud but only shifts its rhythm in a very soft, very slow way, as if everyone has been familiar with this moment for a long time. The fields, stretching out beyond the village, are no longer the vibrant green of before, but have turned to a warm golden hue. The stalks of grain bow low, heavy with seed, swaying in soft layers with a gentle breeze. As you step off the stone path to draw closer to the fields, you can sense the scent of ripe grain blending into the air. A very mellow, very familiar scent, not sharp or overwhelming, just enough for you to realize that the earth and sky have completed a long cycle and are now quietly offering up their rewards. The villagers do not rush out to the fields in a swarm, but move in small groups carrying simple tools. There are no loud calls, no sense of urgency, only slow footsteps advancing toward the fields, like a habit repeated through countless seasons. A farmer leans down, sickle in hand, cutting each bundle of grain with steady strokes. Not fast, not slow, each movement carrying a very peaceful certainty. When the bundles are laid down, they do not fall haphazardly but rest neatly on the ground, arranged in small rows as if they themselves understand there is no need to hurry. In another spot, others gather the grain into larger sheaves, tying them lightly with twine, then propping them up to dry gradually in the soft sunlight. Every movement follows the next naturally, without abrupt pauses or crowding, as if this labor is not a chore but a part of a life rhythm everyone knows by heart. As you walk between those rows of grain, you can hear the tiny sound of stalks brushing against one another, of footsteps on the drying earth, of the wind gliding over the field, creating gentle golden waves that ripple into the distance. It all merges into a very smooth sound. No emphasis, no suddenness, just a very even, very pleasant backdrop. As the sun gradually dips lower, the light becomes softer, draping the fields in a mellow warmth. The sheaves are tucked away bit by bit, not to be finished quickly, but so that each part is placed exactly where it belongs. A few children carry smaller bundles back toward the village, walking slowly, without haste, as if they are participating in something very natural that needs no explanation or instruction. Looking further, you can see the small paths connecting the fields to the village, with people walking along them one by one, carrying their bundles of grain, not heavy, not hurried, simply returning. And as the afternoon slowly turns to dusk, the work does not end abruptly, but merely settles down. What is finished is left in peace. What remains undone does not need to be rushed, for tomorrow will still come, and the fields will still be there, unchanging and unvanishing. In that moment, as the final light lingers very lightly over the partially harvested golden fields, you can clearly feel the peace radiating from every small detail, from the way the sheaves are laid down, from the way the people depart slowly, from the way no one tries to do more than is necessary. You realize that the harvest here is not a time of stress, but a natural part of life, where work and rest merge together, not separate, not opposing, simply continuing, much like the way this village has always existed. Gentle, steady, and never needing to hurry. And then, after those tranquil harvest seasons, the life of the village does not halt at the familiar fields, but expands into journeys further away where a few families follow ancient paths that have existed for a long time, leading them away from the fertile lands toward drier, vaster regions where strips of sand stretch beneath a crystal clear sky and space seems to open up infinitely. They do not travel in a rush but leave the village slowly, in the same way they have lived, carrying only the essentials: a few wooden carts, bags of seeds, thick fabrics, and familiar tools. As they draw further away from the wooden rooftops and the stone paths, they do not feel as though they are leaving something behind, but rather as if they are continuing another part of a life where peace remains intact, only changing its form. The path leads them through lands that gradually grow more arid, where the grass shortens and thins, the earth becoming harder and lighter in color, finally opening into stretches of soft, sprawling sand, where footsteps no longer make a distinct sound but leave only faint traces quickly smoothed away by the wind. As you travel with them on that journey, you can feel that the space here is not as harsh as one might imagine, but instead carries a very deep stillness, no noise, no crowding, only a light breeze gliding over the surface of the sand, creating soft ripples that shift very slowly over time. The group stop when necessary, following no fixed schedule, but rather the sensations of their bodies in the light of the sky. They set up simple tents, fabric stretched just enough to provide shade by day and hold warmth by night. Nothing is in excess, nothing is lacking. Everything is used in the right way and at the right time. In the early morning of the desert, the light arrives very gently, not dazzling, not harsh, only gradually illuminating the dunes and the footprints left over from the night before. Someone from the group steps out of their tent, checking the ropes, readjusting the items set down the evening prior. Every action is slow and steady, devoid of haste. Others wake in turn, needing no calls or urging. Each knows their own task. One person kindles a small fire, placing a pot of water over it. Steam rises very lightly in the cool morning air, and as the water warms, they share small sips. Not to be full, but to begin a new day gently. The animals traveling with them stand still, not tightly bound or coerced, simply being there, accustomed to this slow rhythm of life. When the sun rises a little higher, they begin to move again, not going too far, not trying to reach a specific place, but only following the direction they have always known, where they might find patches of land to stop, to rest, and to continue living the way they have always lived. When noon arrives, they pause beneath the slope of a low dune or a small rocky outcrop, where there is a bit of shade, not to avoid the heat entirely, but merely to soften the light. They sit down, not saying much, needing nothing complicated, simply resting. In that time, you can feel the silence of the desert, not as emptiness, but as a very light fullness, where everything is kept at its most minimal. When evening comes, the light softens once more. The dunes turn to a warmer hue, the wind becomes more pleasant, and the group continues for a short distance before stopping to pitch their tents, light their fires, and rest. Everything repeats but is never tedious, for each day passes in the same rhythm, yet within a space that is always changing ever so slightly. You realize that whether in the peaceful village or on these far-flung nomadic journeys, life remains the same in one regard. There is no need to hurry, no need to reach something distant. One only needs to continue living within each moment, very slowly, very smoothly, where everything has enough time to unfold naturally. During the long days of the journey across the more arid lands, as the distances between stopping points grow a bit further, and the familiar signs of food no longer appear as frequently as before, their lives do not shift abruptly. They simply slow down by one more beat. It is as if they embrace this scarcity with a profound calm, no panic, no rushed searching, but rather a closer observation of the land's tiniest signs. One member of the group leans down to pick up a dry branch, not to use as firewood immediately, but to gauge the remaining moisture within it. Another walks slowly along the low ripples of sand, searching for the faint traces of small plants that might grow in places with little water. When they find them, they do not harvest everything. They take only a sufficient portion, leaving the rest to continue growing, as if they understand that sustaining the rhythm of the long term is more important than having plenty for a single day. Meals at this time become simpler, no longer as abundant as they were in the village. Just a few dried grains cooked with water, or a few roots found after a very slow dig. Each layer of earth is brushed aside without haste, as if the act of digging itself is a part of life's rhythm rather than a stressful effort. When they find water in a low-lying area, they do not scramble or rush to fill their vessels. They share small portions, just enough to keep the body stable, enough to continue the journey. When night falls, small fires are kindled, not to cook elaborate dishes, but merely to provide warmth and soften the space. The soft light of the flames flickers upon quiet faces. No visible worry, no apparent tension, for they do not view scarcity as something to be feared, but as a natural part of the journey. It is much like the way the rain came and went in the village before. It is not always there, but when it is absent, everything still continues in its own way. You can see someone sitting by the fire, slowly grinding the remaining seeds into flour, not trying to do it faster, not grieving for what is gone, only focusing on what is currently in their hands. And when they share that portion of food with one another, there is no comparison, no one receiving more or less. Everything is divided in a very natural, very even way, as if they are sharing not just food, but the peace itself. In those moments, you realize that even if the food is scarcer, even if the journey is longer, the rhythm of their lives remains unchanged, still slow, still stable, still maintaining a gentleness in every action. It is precisely this that prevents hardships from becoming heavy. They are merely a tiny part of the larger flow of life they are following, not rushing, not resisting, simply passing through. The dry days gradually receded behind the steady, slow footsteps of the group. There was no single clear moment that marked the change, but a very light, nameless sensation began to appear in the air, as if the land were slowly softening after a long period of silence. The wind no longer carried the parched breath of the sand, but became a bit more humid, a bit more mellow. As you walk, you can sense that the ground beneath your feet is no longer as hard as before. There are spots that yield slightly, holding your footprint a little longer instead of letting the wind erase it instantly. In the low dips between the stretches of land, you begin to see tiny green sprouts, not prominent, not many, but enough to create a subtle shift in the entire landscape. The people in the group do not stop to observe for long, nor do they speak of it, but their pace seems to slow down even further, not from weariness, but because there is no longer a need to go fast. It is as if they are accustomed to recognizing such minute signs without needing to name them. As you continue with them, you can feel the morning air starting to change. No longer dry and cold, it carries a gentle warmth, very soft, very even. The light changes too, no longer sharp and direct, but becoming mellower, spreading more uniformly across the earth and over the newly budding grass. Somewhere far off, perhaps you hear a very faint sound, indistinct, like the dripping of water or the wind passing through young branches. Even if you aren't sure what it is, you can still sense the surrounding space gradually becoming more alive. It is not a loud awakening, but a very discreet, very slow one, as if everything is waking up, but does not wish to disturb the inherent quiet. The group stops in a low-lying area where a very thin ribbon of water flows through, not strong, not deep, just enough to reflect the light and keep the surrounding soil damp. When they stop, no one rushes to pitch a tent or search for anything immediately. They simply stand for a moment, looking down at the earth, feeling the air, as if confirming that this change is real and not just a fleeting thought. One person leans down, touching the soft layer of soil, then stands up slowly without needing to say a word, for everyone understands. Spring is arriving, not with a grand appearance, but through signs that are very small and very light, yet enough to alter the entire feeling of the journey. From then on, everything begins to transform naturally. Meals no longer depend entirely on what was carried, but gradually include things found from the earth. Tiny new shoots, softer roots that are easier to dig. As they prepare the food, you can see a change in the way they work. It is no longer just about survival, but carries a sense of slight abundance, very small yet clear. When night falls, the air is no longer as cold as before. The fire that is kindled still keeps its warm glow, but it is no longer the only thing making the space comfortable, for the air itself has become softer and smoother. As you sit there, between the gentle firelight and the fresh spring breeze, you can feel that everything is gradually returning to a fuller rhythm of life, yet it retains its slowness and its peace. It is as if, even though the seasons change and the earth shifts, the way life unfolds remains the same, not hurried, not rushed, simply continuing, in a way that is very light, very steady, and very calm. And as spring truly draws nearer, it is no longer just faint signs in the air or tiny green sprouts on the ground, but a clear yet gentle change spreading across the land. The group begins to approach the familiar settlements, where the earthen paths gradually reconnect with the old walkways. As you return with them toward the village, you realize that everything here is also shifting in a very slow, steady rhythm, not with the rush of a new beginning, but like a soft continuation of what has always existed. The wooden houses after the long winter are now opened more often. Curtains are tied neatly to the sides so that light can enter a bit more, not too bright, but enough to warm the space within. In front of each house, you can see the villagers starting to prepare for the new season in a very familiar way. Someone sits on the porch, slowly wiping down tools that were stored away through the cold months. Each sickle, each basket is inspected and placed back in its right spot. No one works faster than the others. No one tries to finish first. Everything unfolds at its own pace, yet merges together quite naturally. In another corner of the village, a few people begin to mend the wooden fences. The planks are replaced not because they are completely broken, but simply because the new season requires a bit more sturdiness. As they work, you don't hear loud hammering or shouting, only small, steady sounds blending into the backdrop of the warming air. The village children also begin to appear more often on the narrow paths, not running or shouting loudly, but walking in small groups, picking up dry branches and gathering them into small bundles to take home. Natural part of the work that needs no reminding. As you walk deeper into the heart of the village, you realize that this place is also changing in a very special way. The small marketplace, which was quiet during the cold season, now begins to show signs of preparation. The wooden stalls are set upright and neat. The fabric covers are shaken out and tied carefully. There is no bustle, but a light movement spreads throughout the space. Someone brings bags of seeds and sets them in a corner, not laying them out immediately, but leaving them there as part of the preparation process. Another person brings baskets of vegetables left over from the previous season, rearranging them tidily, not needing a beautiful display, just enough for others to see and know they are there. As the morning gradually passes, you can see more people appearing in the market, not to buy or sell right away, but to prepare, to meet, and to exchange very small things, short sentences that require little answer, yet are enough to keep the bond between them alive, unbroken and near. Someone brings a basket of eggs, sets it on a wooden table, and then sits for a while, not rushing to sell, not rushing to leave, simply being there, as if the very act of being present in the market is a part of life. When the midday light becomes warmer, the market does not grow noisy, but only becomes a little fuller. More people, More goods, yet everything maintains a very slow tempo. There is no crowding, no loud calling, only footsteps passing back and forth, hands setting things down and picking them up, eyes meeting and turning away quite naturally. Standing in the midst of that space, you can clearly feel that spring does not arrive with a sudden shift, but through the way everything gradually becomes fuller and warmer, while still retaining its inherent peace. As evening falls, the light grows softer. The market does not close abruptly, but slowly settles. Each person gathers what they brought out, without haste, not needing to end right away. For tomorrow they will return and continue. Spring will still linger. There is no need to hurry, no need to seize every moment. Just let it pass naturally. Just as this village has always existed, gentle, steady, and very calm. As the market gradually settles in the mellow evening light, people do not rush to leave immediately. Instead, they often sit a while longer, as if this time is meant not just for exchanging goods, but for holding on to small stories, ordinary things, told in a slow cadence that makes them feel longer and deeper. An elderly man sits near a low wooden table, his hand resting lightly on a still warm earthenware cup. He begins to speak of previous springs, not with sharp details but through sensations. He talks of years when the rain arrived a bit earlier, when the earth was softer and planting became easier. Though he does not say much or emphasize any point, you can feel that these memories are not distant. They remain very close, as if existing in parallel with the present. A woman sitting nearby listens, nodding occasionally, then recounts another story, not directly related, yet continuing the thread quite naturally. She speaks of the first time she went out to sow seeds alone, when everything was new, when she did not yet know where the earth was softest or where it held water best. She does not speak of hardship as a burden, but merely as a part of a process that everyone eventually undergoes. Others sitting around do not interrupt or cut in. They simply listen. When one story ends, there is no abrupt silence, for someone else always continues, as if the stories belong not to individuals but to the entire village, flowing into one another as naturally as the current you have felt from the beginning. A young man tells of his first journey outside the familiar lands, not a trek of great trials, but a slow experience where he learned to observe the sky, to know when to stop and when to continue. As he speaks, his voice is neither high nor fast, but steady and light, as if he is sharing something that requires no emphasis. Simply speaking, it is enough. In another corner, two others exchange words on how they prepared the soil for the new season. Not a spirited debate, but short, slow sentences, sufficient to pass on the experience accumulated over many years. As you listen, you realize these stories have no climax, no clear ending. They aren't told to impress, but to keep memory and experience alive, passed on gently. As night truly falls, the stories do not stop suddenly, but merely grow sparse. Each person stands when they feel ready. There are no loud goodbyes or fixed appointments. They depart as slowly as they arrived, leaving the market to return to its original quiet. Staying there a moment longer, you can feel that the stories just told have not vanished. They remain in the space, merging with the village's peace, becoming a part of it, as if they will be told again another day, another afternoon, as spring continues to drift by slowly, calmly, and never needing to hurry. And as the villagers' tales settle with the fading twilight, no clear moment marks the end. Only the sounds grow thin, footsteps lighten as they leave the market, and each person returns to their familiar path. They carry back not just the items exchanged, but a very light sense of connection, as if simply sitting together for a while was enough to keep life flowing smoothly. Looking at the silhouettes vanishing behind the house corners, you realize the village never truly becomes empty. Even when the people have gone, their presence lingers in the space, the paths, the eaves, and in the way everything is kept tidy without needing readjustment. When the last light disappears, the night does not crash down, but gently drapes over the village like a very thin blanket, holding everything in a deeper state of quiet. The lamps in each house go out one by one, not all at once, not in any order, but according to each person's own rhythm. As the light fades, the space does not grow dark in a heavy sense, but becomes softer. Every detail is muted, no longer sharp, no longer needing to be clear, simply existing in the collective silence. You can imagine that inside each home, the villagers have sat down after a very ordinary day. Not too much work, not too little, just enough to keep life going. They do not need to say much to one another, nor retell the stories they just heard, for all is sufficient. As they lie down to rest, there is no rush to fall into sleep, but rather a very natural process, much like the way they lived all day. Slow, steady, nothing forced, nothing prolonged, simply continuing from one state to another smoothly. Standing in the midst of that village, whether you walk or stand still, you can feel everything drifting in a very light stream. No beginning, no end, only continuation from day to night, from season to season, from small stories told then remembered in a hazy, mellow way. You realize that what makes this place special is not what happens, but how everything is kept at a very slow, stable tempo, where nothing needs to change abruptly, nothing needs to be achieved quickly. There is enough time for everything to happen, to exist, to settle. Remaining there, you no longer feel like a visitor who will leave, but as if you have always been there, a tiny part of this peaceful flow where things will continue, even when you are no longer paying attention. Tomorrow will come just as today came, gently, not fast, not slow, just enough. In that ceaseless yet unhurried continuation, you can feel a very deep, vast peace, as if it belongs not just to the village but spreads further past the roads, the fields, the nomadic journeys, to become a universal feeling, a state you can return to at any time. No need to search, no need to try, for it has always been there, waiting for you to notice, waiting for you to stop long enough to feel it. As you let everything drift that way, neither holding on nor pushing away, you will see that this story does not truly end, but only settles down, like a very light ripple that has just passed, leaving the water's surface still, where no clear trace of movement remains. Yet its sensation lingers, long after everything has become completely quiet. Wishing everyone watching the video a very good night's sleep. Would you like me to generate a final, soothing image of the village at night to accompany this closing, or perhaps help you set a timer for some gentle rain sounds?